Good afternoon. We are here today about you, your ego, and your role webinar. This webinar is sponsored by Human Development and Leadership Division of ASQ. So today's webinar panelist, I am your host, Deepak Biskitwala. I am a webinar chair. We have a panelist here, Brooke Keder. He is the ASQ H&L Division Leadership Team. And Malin Monda, she is also in the leadership team. Before we start our webinar, we want to just have a little bit housekeeping. Your question will be answered at the end of the webinar. You can post your questions anytime during the presentation using questions panel on your right on the GoToWebinar tool. To earn 0.1 RU recertification unit, you have to attend this webinar for minimum 45 minutes, and webinar recording and PowerPoint will be posted on ASQ Human Development and Leadership website, that is http://www.asqhdnl.org. I want to talk about our upcoming webinar. In October, we're going to have a webinar, basically joint webinar from HD&L Division and Innovation Division. And the title of this webinar is Bridge to Innovation. So how can you make your project successful using engineering principles? And this webinar will be given by Tracy Owens. So look for some invitation sometime. This webinar will be the first week of October. We will communicate the date, time, the same time. So please look for that webinar. You will see invitation very soon. And last thing, I want to introduce our speaker. Today's speaker, his name is Marc. He has been involved in quality management and continuous improvement fields for more than 25 years. He has worked in pharmaceutical, chemical, medical, printing, train building, and service industries since last 25 years. Has been involved with training and soft skill in order to improve performance. He has published many articles and papers on quality management, and he is a proud member of Human Development and Leadership Division, Quality Management Division, Lean Enterprise Division, Audit Division, and Measurement Quality Division. So please welcome Marc. Marc, I'm just transferring to you.
Okay.
So you will see the screen.
Yeah, you should basically see my screen now, showing you, your ego, and your role. And thank you for showing up or attending this webinar. First things first, what I'd like to basically say is my intent here is not to rewrite any book or contest any psychology or psychiatry information. It's basically based on my observations during all those years talking and working with people. I'm going to use the definition of ego as stated. It's a person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance, and the self itself is a person's essential being. And the difference I make is when you're yourself, you're okay. Your ego is basically the engine that makes you go forward. And as an engine, if it goes way too fast, it overheats and creates issues. And what it transfers in work environment is that creates conflict. So let's go right away. Ego, we all have one, whether we like it or not. That's part of us. Some are bigger than others. Some are more realistic than others. But that's the way it is. And you may have in your mind people that we say sometimes, oh, like that person has a big ego or has no ego or whatever, or so they only think about themselves. That's the dark side of the ego, let's put it this way. We're born free, without any. and basically we develop it. You know, when we hear the terrible 2 or terrible 3, it's that time in our life that we basically create our own ego and develop it pretty hard. And we rarely, if never, put our ego aside to let somebody else's ego to take over. We accept somebody to take the lead, but not their ego. Because at that point in time, the ego becomes a defense mechanism, and we'll see a little further down what I mean by that. And the ego, like I was saying, is basically drives our physical appearance and our mental state. It's what is responsible for our successes. It's our engine to move us forward. But again, if it goes in overdrive, well, we create issues with that. The ego is also part of the personality that defines who we are compared to others. Let's say you would be able to see me and I would have some basketball player beside me. He would be taller than me and I would be shorter than him. Would that be a comparison or a measurement? In this case, it's a fact. We can measure it. We can validate and prove that he's taller or that I'm shorter. But if my ego feels diminished or attacked by it, I may say something like, okay, you're tall, good for you. But guess what? In any kind of plane, in any seat in the plane, I have all the legroom I want. And that's basically a sort of ego reaction to say, well, I feel lesser or diminished because I'm shorter. So I try to compensate and say something that puts me in a better lighting than the other person. And our ego is basically constructed based on our past histories and experiences. And as you see on the chart, it would be so nice. It would be the one that with the big X in the middle. We are ourselves, and there's a straight line, very clear cut, and then we know that we are in our ego mode. Actually, we're not. We're like that scale that smoothly goes from ourselves to our ego, and depending on the moment and who we deal with, our ego is triggered way before or after, depending on the situation. Okay, what's happening here? Okay. There's many definitions of the ego, and the one that I like is, you know, it's the feel to need to be special. And if I would ask the question, do you feel special in any way? Usually people say, yeah, I'm special because of this, because of that, because of this. And if you look at it closely, you'd hear them say, I'm special compared to this or to that person. Not ego behavior. It's very subtle, okay? Or the ego is also what makes us feel lacking in some way, and we try to compensate by putting ourselves in a better lighting, like the fact that I'm short compared to somebody that is tall. Hey, no, I have shorter legs, so I fit anywhere. At that point, your ego is not your friend anymore. It starts to create tension and conflict in the workplace. Understanding that, you may try to avoid it to maintain the balance in the relationships. So moving along, the easiest way basically to determine if your ego is at play is you could answer this question. Do I feel superior to others, or do I feel inferior to others? Because guess what? Ego could be, I'm much better than you guys. But also, you know, what I call them the professional victim.
Excuse me, Mark.
Marc? Yep.
Marilyn, we're getting a lot of static from your line.
Okay. Is this better?
I'm wondering, yeah, that is better. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll try to keep it this way. Let me know if it improves or not. Okay. So I was at the professional victim type person, you know, those people that walk along the walls and they say things like, poor me, the world is so unfair, everything always hits me. They also have big ego because they basically suck on people's attention. Okay? What we need to understand from there is, like, we're not special. We're basically different and unique in our own ways. And sometimes when we say that, or when I say that, people say, no, I'm special, no matter what. Okay, you believe whatever you want, you stay where as you state what you want, but if you look at it, Being special is a comparison to somebody else. Being different and unique is the fact that you accept who you are and you accept how other people are. And that's the fact of life. Then you move along and you move forward.
For me,
Yes, hello?
Mark, I'm sorry, for me the sound is very bad. Is it the same for you, D?
I have a hard time also listening to you. Let me try this. Is this better now? Hello?
Yes, Mark, I can hear you very well.
Let's try that again.
Yes.
Okay, is that better now?
Okay, then it must be me.
Okay, so if that's better, we'll keep on going this way.
Marilyn,
Okay.
my sound is not bad either.
Okay, oh boy. Well, that's basically my phone or my microphone, but that's basically the best that I can do right now. How is it now?
It's fine for me.
Okay, so hopefully it's good for everybody, or maybe you could post it.
So Mark, I'm hearing good feedback. I see people are putting feedback saying the sound is good. So please continue.
Okay, my ego will not take any issue with that.
Okay.
Basically, at times, when there's occasion where our pride and ego takes the best of us, when sometimes we call it, we snap, we pop our fuse, we lash out, we get frustrated, whatever. That's the part of the ego that we don't want to have or that we want to control. That's usually the one that creates those issues at work and sometimes elsewhere. So the letting go part is also part of your ego. Consciously, we could say, okay, I got this bad experience, I learned from it, and I'm going forward. Hey, that's good. But the ego is the type of your part of your personality that would say, you remember something from the past that was pretty hard for you to go through, and guess what? You have that same feeling creeping back up, something that was really frustrating. You have that frustration coming back up. That's the part that you did not let go. And the ego never lets things go in that fashion. So we carry that misery for nothing, and the minute we can use it, or where our ego, can use it to make us feel bad or get into a conflict, it'll happen. So what you could do as an exercise is basically try to look in your memory. Last time you popped your fuse, for instance, and probably just by thinking about it, you have that weird or bad feeling coming back up. Like, that person made this to me, and it's so unfair. And just by talking about it, yes, does this sound good? I hear something on the line now. Okay. Sound is still good? I'm moving forward then.
Brooks, can you mute your phone? Thanks.
My phone what? Sorry?
Mark, you are fine.
I'm fine? Okay,
Yep.
Good. So if people look back in their memory to find some bad experience, probably the bad feeling comes up. Letting go is to be able to say, hey, I got this through, I moved forward, but I don't need that misery. I don't need to carry it. And if you do that exercise a few times, you become more open and you don't feel attacked by so many things that make you react. So anything that your ego taking the best of you, do you remember anything? And do you have that creepy feeling? I hope so, because that would be part of you becoming aware of that ego negative side. And when your ego starts creeping into a situation, you have usually a little twitch right below your sternum in the stomach, and it just goes like little contraction, and then boom, you pop your fuse. If you're aware of that little twitch there, you can control your ego in a better way. So when your ego takes over, usually what happens, a conflict, an argument, probably. And sometimes people say, no, no argument, but they just keep it inside, and the argument or the conflict is within themselves. That's the bad part of the ego that people should control and be aware of. So if we move along, in this same example, if we play the game what if, what could you have done to prevent that event or that argument from happening? Let's say somebody lends their car to a friend, and that car comes back and it's so filthy and dirty, and they say, well, that is not acceptable, I'm not happy, blah, blah, blah. What they could have done is, okay, here's my car, but make sure it comes back in as clean as I give it to you, or whatever. So there's ways for us to think ahead and have clear expectations. So then we're not frustrated when it comes back. Let's look at some of the ego part. Another way to tell if your ego is at stake here, or the bad side of it, I should say, is you're desperate to be right. You know when you're fighting for something and you don't remember what you're fighting for, but you're still fighting? You have that mindset in your head that says, I'm going to prove you wrong, or I am right and I'm going to prove it to you. Well, usually in an argument, if you're right, especially in work, you have evidence, you have references, you have facts that you should be using, and it's just a matter of presenting it, and then don't need to fight. The person may accept it or not, but then there's something else that might happen. There might be consequences or an escalate, but not into a fight, or not in the state of mind saying, I'm going to prove you wrong no matter what. So when you're in that mode, you could have two choices. You can be happy and let go of the conflict, or you can be right. At that point, in that situation, the cost of being right is very high. Energy and emotions-wise, it's very high. It's your call to go and still fight about things. So the great question to ask yourself is, like, when you're in that big argument, what do you want? Sacrifice your personal happiness, or make your ego happy by being right at any cost? Think about that a bit. But how could we control our ego? Here's 10 ways that will give you the maximum scale of the bad ego, and you can work your way down to downscale it to a certain extent for you to figure out. But those 10 points are like, that's it, 100% ego, you lose control, and the conflict is right there ready to pop. So let's start. You know, you feel elevated by gossiping. And what I mean gossiping, you know, I talk about to someone about somebody else, and we're having fun saying, well, that person is such and such. And usually the second person will add a layer of something negative, and then we're having so much fun. What's the use? What good will it bring? Nothing. That's ego behavior. Also, I find that gossiping, people tend to say, well, gossiping is talking bad about somebody else. I agree. But the baseline, what might trigger gossiping is third-party information. Let's say I tell to person A something that is very important, and person A tries in her best or his best ability to repeat it to person B. That could be the baseline of gossiping. Since that person is not a tape recorder or a video camera, they will not repeat the exact words with the exact tone and everything. They will filter it consciously or unconsciously. It's a basis for gossiping. Be aware of that one. Or you could find yourself that you just can't back down. You know, some of those arguments that even if the person leaves, a few days after that person comes back and you're bang into that fighting mode again, because I am going to prove you right, or prove you wrong. That type of attitude. Or you could compare yourself as being better than the others. Well, I'm better, I'm richer, I'm smarter, whatever. Or the opposite, like the professional victim I was talking before, saying, well, poor little me, things are so unfair. You'll have somebody coming up to you say, no, it's not that bad, blah, 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 and then they suck on that attention. Or you feel jealous. Let's say my best friend wins the lottery. I would feel happy. I would also feel somewhat envy, saying, well, I would have liked to win. That is okay. The issue comes when the ego creeps in and says, Well, it is so unfair. I've been buying that ticket for 20 years. I never won a dollar. This guy comes up, buys one ticket, and wants a jackpot. That is not acceptable. That is so unfair. That's the reaction of the ego. And sometimes it's very, very subtle. When we talk of ego at this point, you know, at work, do we talk about our manager or our superior? Do we talk about our direct reports or subordinates? Even in the words that we use, somebody above or below us, it's a comparison. Your manager and your direct reports have different jobs, different responsibilities. Does not make them better or less than who you are. Remember, at the beginning, you're not special. You're different and unique. Moving forward, you could talk 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute when you meet somebody. You know those type of people that come in and say, oh, hi, by the way, oh, I've been doing this, I went golfing, blah, 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 blah. Then they realize that, oh, time is running out. I have no time to talk to you, and they disappear. You're just standing there like, okay, what happened here? Because usually human beings, when we see each other, what do? We greet each other and say hi. And then the next thing that would come up would say, how are you? What's going up? What's going on? What's happening with you? And you ask the person to share. You don't take the central spotlight. That's ego behavior again, and that may frustrate people. You'd rather win than do your best. That's a nice one. You already know I'm short. Okay, I have a bit too much fat on my body, so I'm not the marathon runner built. I'm not long and slim, so I would not win a marathon. But years ago, I said, hey, 42 kilometers, 0.2, like that's nuts, that's crazy. I have to try that. I was sure I would not win. It's impossible, but I tried it. If I would have been in my ego, in the bad side of my ego state at that point, I would have said, no, I won't try it. Can't do it. No, I won't try. And those people at work, you have to remember that those people in a work environment, they'll say, no, I won't try this. I won't change that. I won't learn this. Or they'll say things, well, I can't. Let's ask that person to do it. That's the ego being afraid of not winning or being top of the top at the first attempt. People suck when you don't win. You know what we call the sore losers? That's ego behavior. Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. Hey, what's important here? If I really need to win that bad, I may have an issue. My self-esteem may be attacked of some sort because, hey, when I play games, sometimes I win, it's fun. Sometimes I lose, oh, it's fun also. I've probably learned something along the way. You could set yourself impossible goals. That's a very subtle win. You know those professional victims again? They set goals that are totally unrealistic, and then they say, oh, I couldn't do it. And somebody will come along, say, no, it's not that bad. Your goals were probably too high. Reconsider, blah, blah. And they feel better. So they suck on energy. But the last one is the best one, is you blame others for things that don't go your way. In my business right now, I'm in charge of, or I work with the screening process for the security at the airport. And sometimes we hear issues like they blame the other workers, the passengers, the luggage, the machine, the x-ray, whatever, instead of saying, sorry, I made a mistake, this is where I goofed or didn't pay attention, now let's move forward. These 10 signs are basically ego-driven behavior. If you're aware about them with you, you can control your ego. You'll see that. You probably have names or faces or events that pop in your head while we're going through those points for you to say, yeah, I know a person like that, or I know it's an event like that. Use that to your advantage to learn how to be aware and then control what's happening to prevent conflict. Now, your ego and your role, that's not the same thing. My job is continuous improvement. And since it's screening at the airport, I usually take the plane. And when I do so, yeah, I go through the screening process, and it's my own people that go through the work. One day, one of the officers there did not treat me as a passenger the way they should have. And then I could react in two different ways. First way, my ego could say like, wow, that person is treating me like a piece of, and I'll stay politically correct here, and react on it and pop my fuse and start screaming and shouting and using a bad language against that person. Would that improve the situation or improve the service in the long run? Probably not. What I could have done, and that's what I did in that time, is I basically answered back in a very polite, calm way, giving them an opportunity to correct their behavior. That person was fast enough to correct it. If not, they would have got some information saying, hey, what you did with passenger X was not correct. You have to improve on it. So, hey, I can lash out, pop my fuse, let my ego take the show. What would be the result? A conflict or an argument. Other ways is like I present information in the way that they can relate and say, oh, there's a gap here. I have to change myself, and then they correct. And then you acknowledge that change. So nobody's ego is ruffled, and you don't need to go into a conflict. So that's basically the big difference between your role and your ego. If you need your ego to play your role, there's something wrong. And basically, when we say that our ego convinces us that we're important, needed, and great at what we do, that is good. That is okay, because we are important. We are needed. We're good at what we do. That's normal. Remember at the beginning I was saying the ego is your engine that drives you forward? That level is acceptable. The issue comes when your ego tells you, well, you're more important, always needed, and a bit better, if not better than everybody else. Oops, that's a little too fast. Your engine is overheating right now. So check that and keep that in balance. People are important, needed, and pretty good at what they do. Otherwise, they would not do what they're doing right now. If we move forward, I'll do a bit of ego bashing here, and sometimes people react to that, but we're not as important as we think we are usually at work. In this webinar, if I would not be here, somebody else would do it. Okay, so that's it. Apple is still a very successful company. Life goes on. I'll give you an example of the Belgian parliament. In Belgium, the country was without any government for more than 2 years because the elected people could not agree on who would take power and so on. Belgium survived, and there was no issue that happened in Belgium for those years. So, check your importance. Some people are smart, even smarter. Let's put it this way, just talking like that. Do you think that Einstein, Albert Einstein, is way smarter than me when it comes to math and physics? And I'm not trying to compare myself. I can show my marks at school that basically show that, no, I'm not that genius. So he's way smarter than me on that one. If I would be as good as him or smarter, would I be here? I would probably be in a university somewhere doing some research. And the issue is you accept that some people may be smarter than you. You allow others to share their knowledge and ideas to you so they can contribute a little more. So in the work environment, hey, you can share and use other people's information or knowledge or expertise. Well, you know, sometimes people say that, hey, my boss really likes me because I can answer all their questions. First things first, you're not always with your boss. Second, when your boss asks you a question because you're right beside there, yeah, it might be your turn to answer. But you don't need to answer all of their questions. That's giving you a certain kind of self-importance that you don't have. Moving along. These people, you know, people that ask for help. What do you think of those people? Is that good or bad? Actually, it's good when you know your limits and you ask for help. Asking for help all the time is not good. We'll take the example of this webinar. I asked for help. I said, hey, I'm willing to share this information, but guess what? I don't have the know-how, I don't have the connections, I have nothing. So basically, the division worked it around, made its advertisement and everything to help me share this information. And that's perfectly okay. I have no issues with that. Sometimes people believe that when they're way too busy, they are so important. If I look at it from a quality standpoint, if you're too busy, you may have issues with organizing yourself, managing your time or your tasks, but for sure, being too busy is not being important. I'll ask you, firefighters, are they important? If somebody says no, well, I'm in disagreement, but it's okay. Firefighters are very important, but are they too busy? They are busy when they get a call. Other than that, they take care of the equipment, they practice, whatever. But they're not too busy, but they're very, very important. So look at it this way. Spending time telling others how busy you are, that's also a fun one. You waste your time and everybody else. In this case, I would answer in a funny way. Just shut up and do your job, okay? Because that's a waste of time. Bragging. That's a good one. I'll use the expression, let's say that at work, the company made a decision to render some information available to all employees because the company believes it's important. That's a statement. But if I come in and say, well, I was able to convince our VP that this information was vital for the benefit of the company, and I'm the one that would deliver it, that's bragging, isn't it? It's like I'm using too many I's in there. I can be proud of what I do, but I don't need to demonstrate it so badly that people say, oh, you're good. I motivate myself. That's enough. That's good. Set your ego aside. If you pay attention to your teammates, okay, you become then caring and you really have a part to play. We're not indispensable. One person told me, well, what you basically say is we're like, excuse the expression, dirty diapers. And I have to say, basically, yes. No, everybody could be replaced. And if you really believe that you're in the position that you could be replaced or you're not indispensable, you then open yourself to what does other people have to offer to benefit the team. And you allow them to learn and grow. And you also learn and grow. Enough ego bashing. Now let's see at ways that you can control your ego. And at the same time, you know, some people say, well, I don't feel respected at work. And they request respect. Respect needs to be earned. And if you basically control your ego, the consequence is you will develop respect, hey, which is not bad. So if you're really interested in your people, you don't need to know all of their life, but understand a bit of how they think, where they're coming from. It'll make them feel more secure, and they will probably believe that you're a good person. And doing so, they will feel that you're going to care, or you are caring. Which brings us to the next point. When you are caring enough, you will have an impact on how people behave. Ever heard of, I don't know, that manager always seems to be able to ask a little extra from their employees. And sometimes you hear, well, that manager, man, nobody wants to work with that person. They'll never give a second more than what they need to. Probably, if you look in what's happening, that person might be caring or being open to their team, and then people will modify or change their behavior towards the positive side of things. So in this sense, we should spend less time punishing or correcting and more time recognizing or acknowledging what people do. And at one time, somebody told me this at the question, when you see something complaint, do you go and tell them? the answer I got, and I couldn't believe it, was, no, I don't need to tell them they're doing good. Just the fact that I'm not going to talk to them, they know that they're doing something good. I said, whoa, no, that doesn't work that way. People cannot be inside your head. You have to tell them. And your job as a quality control is, this is good, thank you. This is not good, well, you need to improve on it. You have to give both sides of the coin, not only punishing people. That's also part of the caring process. Moving on. This question, try to answer it just by yes or no. I'm giving you a few seconds here. Probably the answer that everybody is thinking about is, yes, but it depends. Well, I have to tell you, I am not humble. And I'll demonstrate why. It's not that my ego is big, but I'm honest enough to say, no, I am not humble. Because when you talk of being humble, it looks like humble bragging. You know, I would ask somebody, are you humble? And they would answer something like, oh, come on, you know me. I'm the most humble people on this planet. Yeah, right. Come again. Because basically humility is something that you don't really talk about. You have to demonstrate it. And this is how you demonstrate it. You put other people's needs first, okay, without sacrificing your own. Very important. You praise other people sincerely. Hey, it's good, it's good, it's awesome, it's awesome. It's just plain conforming. Say so. People need to know where they stand. You could do little things for others. In my field, I see a lot of people say, well, I'm going to the coffee shop. Somebody wants a coffee or something. That's doing little things. Nothing major, like, no, I will not drive you to back home and back to work. No, it's like little stuff, and it pays. You can listen to other people's opinion. My last job, I was at Bombardier in the train manufacturing, not the planes. And in the building we were working, there was 900 people. 800 were engineers. 100 were not engineers. And at one time, they had an issue with a train. They could not figure it out because based on their views and calculation, it could not be possible to get it. But the issue was there. They were open enough to listen to other people's opinion, to say, well, look at it, folks. We thought it was impossible, and it's right there in front of us. We could see that it's possible. So let's listen to other people's point of view. It may help us find a way to understand what happened. That's listening to other opinions, even though you're the most knowledgeable person on that subject. Also, you don't need to impose your views. If you need to impose your views, what are you using to impose? Yourself or your ego? Sorry. What's happening here? I touched my screens too fast. So don't impose your views. No need to. Present it. They decide. If they make the wrong call, well, there's consequences. That's part of the game. And I like that sentence. Humility is like underwear. Essential. But indecent if it shows. And some people always come up with a little smile when I say that. But it's not the type of underwear you like to look at. It's the plain, old, beaten up underwear that you don't want to see at all. That's humility for me. On the same token, you should not be a doormat. Being too nice puts you in a position that some people may take advantage. So you have to respect yourself. Know who you are, know your limits. You have to know how to say and when to say no. If you take too much on your plate, are you going to deliver? Probably not. Then you'll get people that are frustrated because they don't get what they requested. Don't fear rejection. When I was a kid, I was rejected because I was coming from Belgium and Canada in the French sector of the country, and my accent was way different. So I was put on a side saying like, hey, you're different, you're not part of us. So I know what rejection is, but I've learned with time that no matter what you do, some people will like you, some people will hate you or don't like you, And the mass majority will either like or dislike you depending on the phase of the moon, the color of your shirt, the temperature outside, whatever. So you don't need to feel rejection. Be yourself. People will recognize who you are and you'll be transparent. Not in the sense that you're becoming invisible, in the sense that, hey, what they see is what they get. And they can really rely on what they see. And you could be firm without being rude. The example I use with the screening officer not treating me right. By saying things very politely, very calmly, with a smile, I was firm. I was basically telling that person, this is the behavior that you have to do. You have to have that behavior, not something else. It was very subtle, but they picked it up, thank God. But you can be firm without being rude. And you could be very firm without too much energy. Because what is being firm, by the way? Being firm is offering one option. Not two, just one. If you offer two options, what's going to happen on somebody that is more or less on the defensive? You have to create a third one, probably somewhere in between the two options that you offered. So offer only one. That's it. You could be open to other ideas. As a personal example, 2 years ago, I started working at Garda World after being thanked by Bombardier, because they usually do that on a regular basis. They remove some people and change them. So I was part of one of those waves. And I was looking for a permanent job. And I saw an offer like, okay, maternity leave contract in quality management. Like, nah. Okay, it's my field, but it's only 1 year, and I want something permanent. Let's try it. Guess what? Last year, they offered me a permanent position in continuous improvement. I would have refused that contract. Where would I be now? I have no idea. So being open, something new will happen. And always deliver on your promises. If you do not deliver on your promises, you lose credibility. So watch what you're promising. And people say, well, promising. I never promise anything to people. Well, the minute you say to someone, hey, I'll do this for you, or they request, well, can you do this for me? And you say, yes, that's basically a promise. It's a commitment, and you have to honor it. If for some reason you cannot do it, say so before the intended deadline. Don't say too much. Don't say, well, I'll give you this, and every single time, well, no, I can't. That's as bad as not respecting your word. But do this. Keeping a promise, people will remember that. And it'll work on your favor. So all those nice behaviors basically develop and create respect between people. And then if there's respect and trust, you can go further, way further in work without having all those conflicts and argumentations and clashes between people. And I'm not talking here about a dream world. I'm talking of, hey, on the floor, when you feel this way, people react differently. The first few times you may react that way, people will say, what? What? You said something nice to me? What does it mean? Hey, take it for what it's worth. You did a good job, thank you, and then let them do their stuff. They'll get used to it, and it'll pay. It's an investment. Any questions? Now would be probably the time for the questions, because I've basically done my share of the stuff. Now it's probably your share of stuff to do, if you have any questions.
Hello, Mark.
Yes.
Hey, Mark, you did a wonderful job. I have a few questions for you. The
Yes.
audience has asked the question.
Yes.
The one question, the attendee named Philip, he asked probably when you are talking about 10 sign, your ego is in
Yes.
control in that time frame. So I'm
Yes.
giving you context. So question he asked, Mark, aren't you really talking about your society creating low self-esteem in people, societal systems and processes that inhibit people from taking responsibility from their own actions?
Yeah, well, to answer that one, yeah, the society or work environment can create processes and a structure around it to try to control it. But it comes to the individual to make a choice like, hey, do I really participate as who I am, or I need to play some power rules or games around here, and that no processes of any way will control that. But yes, you can minimize the ego reaction by having some structure that allows people for sharing and to be active participant in their own processes. I don't know if it answers the question, but yeah, that's how I would answer it.
So in the same time frame, this particular attendee asked a question, isn't it the example of not winning the lottery reality? People search for a silver bullet and not being in the reality about the odds of actual winning.
Okay, well, winning is not bad. Winning is not the issue here. It's like the issue is like when you really desperately want to prove that somebody else is wrong. Okay, winning or losing is part of any game or part of any process. If you are open enough to say, well, I failed on this one, or I didn't do something right on that one, and I can use that to go forward, that's controlling your ego. But if you try to fight it out and blame other people, you'll go nowhere.
Okay, there's another question about, sounds like you are creating an us and them situation within yourself, yes, not unlike the statement, the devil made me do it. Separating yourself, one second, separating yourself into multiple parts is not good. One needs to be able to take responsibility for your own actions, not allow blame on the ego.
Okay, I agree 100%. But the thing is, humans are being humans, and not everybody around are capable of taking full responsibility or accountability for what they do or what they decide not to do. And my point of view here was to explain that how to reduce the potential conflict or argumentation in a work environment. If people are accountable and feel responsible, you don't need to have that control, because people are already willing to share and participate. The me and them, or us and them, exists. No matter what we do, it's a human factor. We're part of groups or cliques or networks that puts us in relation. And some people are open, some are not. And you need to understand the not open to reduce the potential of conflict.
So here is a comment about the suggestion, solution, new idea sounds very much like good team functioning and people relationship.
Okay. I think I lost part of. I think I lost part.
Yeah, sorry, I will repeat this. So this particular individual also gives us, kind of the comments around that. The suggestions, solutions, new idea sounds very much like a good team functioning and people relationship.
Well, I sure hope that people might just listen or even just try. In my training in my own organization, what I basically do is like, this is my point of view. Try things. Try and see how it goes. And if it works well, good. If it doesn't, well, don't use it or change it or adapt it to your group. I'm not here to impose my views. I'm just here to share.
Thank you, Marc. So I have another question. What is the first step for self-improvement? Improve ego or improve role?
The French version of that? That's what you're asking?
No, I'm repeating the question again.
Yes.
What is the first step for self-improvement, improve ego or improve role? So between improve ego and improve role, which one is the most important or first step for the self-improvement?
Well, the first step is really improve role, but through the fact that you should become more aware of your own emotions when you get into a tension or a potential conflict situation. If you stay calm and use facts only, and you don't use those emotions, you don't get overwhelmed with those emotions, you're in a better position to do your role without using your ego as a leverage, let's put it this way. So to answer that question, understand your role better and try to just stick with facts.
Thank you, Mark. Another question I have is, letting go of ego is easier said than done. What are some techniques? The question is, what are some techniques to continue trying?
Well, controlling your ego and letting go is a very tough, but people should just sort of take one small example of something that they got a bit frustrated and try to understand what was the real issue, what really happened, and what did they do with it. If you're going forward with having a different experience and you use that to go forward without keeping the misery that goes with it, that's letting go. And it's very, very difficult. Very difficult. You really have to work on something small and say, hey, I succeeded of letting go that misery feeling that's attached to that experience. And I've learned from there and I moved away from that. We move away from a lot of bad experience in our lives. But we keep that sort of misery in the bank for I don't know what reason. And it's tough. It's very tough to get rid. But try it once, succeed once. It feels so good that you'll do it again.
This is Brooks. I have a piece of advice. I'm 74 years old. Over time, if you monitor the results of the times that you lost your temper, you'll find the data are pretty discouraging. And doesn't work very well. So
the thing is,
I collected a lot of data over the years, and I wouldn't say I don't lose my temper, but I do less frequently.
Well, losing your temper, losing your temper for me is like you would have known me a few years ago. I was like the Tasmanian devil. If you don't know the cartoon, my temper was like up there and like ready to pop at any point in time. But the cost of that in energy and emotion is so high, then you get fed up after a while of feeling that bad. And you're slowly, if you try to open yourself to something different and you don't take attacks personally, that's also difficult. It helps you to reduce those temper bursts. And by doing so, you feel something different. And I like the advice that you bring, the information, because lots of people lose their temper. And I still lose my temper. I'm not perfect. But when it happens, okay, what's going on here? And I can backtrack and say, okay, this happened. Where does it come from?
Well, Mark, I have a couple of more questions for you, but Brooks, thank you for chiming in. The question is, how to best manage, deal with millennial sense of entitlement?
Millennials, yes, or the Generation X or whoever. I would have to say, like, to be so factual and offer them the opportunity to make the decision, but present also the consequences that come with those decisions. Because they want to manage their own stuff, it's okay, but they have to learn and to be aware and make a decision that is well balanced. So hey, this is what is possible, these are the consequences, now you decide. And you have to stick to what they decide and stick to the consequence of those. And because millennials want to participate, they want to do stuff. Sometimes too fast, too much, but to me that's how I deal with them. And usually doing that, it puts them in the position that I'm not imposing, I'm offering options, and hey, they have the free decision to say, I'll do it or I won't. And that's what they thrive on, is like, hey, I'm in charge of my own life.
Well, then I got a kind of the question, what your comment is about. Are you saying that by being more aware of our ego, we realize that we are not our emotions?
Well, I don't know if I would go that far. The thing is, being more aware of your ego puts you in a position that you could deal with facts more than with emotions. Not that you become cold and like a robot, but you don't use that as a leverage to pump yourself up and to use your temper. You're capable to stay calm and analyze what's happening or what's coming to you through a factual filter. And doing so, you'll see a lot of information that you get that are totally useless, and you will put them aside. And also, if people see that you react that way, slowly but surely, but slowly, they'll come up to you with more facts than opinions. But again, you can't win them all. There's some that will just stay the way they are, and you'll have no control over them. What I'm saying is, like, be aware of how you react to reduce the potential of conflict.
Well, and I have the last question of the day. It seems like, how do you, with people who don't recognize the change required in their behaviors when you take the approach that you described earlier in your airport example? That means they lack self or social awareness.
Okay, could you, I missed a few words because of the telephone. Could you just repeat the question, please?
Sure, no problem. How do you deal with people who do not recognize the change required in their behaviors when you take the approach that you described earlier in your airport example? That means
okay,
they lack self and social awareness.
Okay, well, for those people that are really closed, you may have to repeat it a few times. If it's worth it, you try it a few times. If not, usually in our systems or with the HR or whatever, there's an escalate process or there's a consequence that goes with some of the behaviors. And what I've seen, especially with the younger ones, is if you explain everything and they can make a decision on their own, it's usually simpler. But again, you will not win them all. But you could try and get to win a lot more than what you do now. And those exceptions, well, you need to deal with them in a different format. You need to bring them to either HR or to a different disciplinary process to probably sometimes even get them out of the company. It happens. But if you're really honest and you're factual, slowly but surely they may get the message. Then it's on their own to make the call. And that's also part of our ego to say, well, no, I have to impose. No. They make the decision. If it's good, they stay. If it's not good, well, guess what? There's other consequences or other processes that will be triggered from that.
So Marc, and the people who are listening, thank you very much for your time today. We are closing almost 7 o'clock. Just a couple of reminders. The recording of this webinar and PowerPoint will be hosted on Human Development and Leadership website. Please look for October webinar. That's webinar on the bridge to innovation, how you can utilize your engineering skill to make your project successful. And sometime it will happen the 4th week of October. So please look for that. And again, thank you very much for your time. And you will receive 0.1 recertification you need for this webinar. Again, thank you very much, and see you next in October again. Thank you.
Thank you.